What if the greatest power was the one that never had to prove itself? What if influence didn't come from force, but from restraint so precise it reshaped every room you entered? And what if the secret to outsmarting anyone wasn't in shouting louder, but in mastering silence, timing, and presence itself? True power that endures, doesn't scream it, doesn't beg to be seen or recognized. It simply is steady, centered, unshaken in a world ruled by noise and emotional outbursts. The Stoic doesn't fight to be noticed. He commands by doing less. He doesn't rush. He doesn't scramble. He doesn't flex. He holds still, and somehow that stillness shifts the entire room. He doesn't rush. He doesn't scramble. He doesn't need to react because he already understands the man in deep self-control of himself is in deep self-control of the outcome. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have true power that endures over your mind, not outside." Events realize this and you will find unshakable strength. This video isn't about avoiding true power that endures. It's about mastering the kind that lasts, the kind that doesn't burn fast but burns deep, the kind of presence that doesn't chase validation but earns respect. Through discipline, timing, and silence. These are 5 Stoic strategies that make you unshakable in conflict and untouchable under pressure. Let's begin unshakable strength through stillness, true power that endures, that must shout to be. Seen is not true power, that endures it. It's insecurity, disguised as unshakable strength. The Stoic knows this. He knows that real dominance doesn't roar. It radiates calm, centered, and unmovable. In any room, the most dangerous man is not the one who speaks loudest, gestures wildly, or demands attention. It's the one who says the least, watches the most, and whose energy speaks louder than his words ever could. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. That is not weakness, that is deep self-control." The world will tempt you to react, to prove yourself, to respond to insults, to match the energy of the storm of chaos with the storm of chaos. But the Stoic resists this pull. He recognizes that when you react, you surrender deep self-control. When you defend your pride, you lose your position. And when you allow emotion to lead, you abandon clarity. Stillness is a weapon, not passivity, not indifference, but focused restraint. While others lash out in anger, he observes. While others fumble for dominance through noise, he claims it. Through silence, he lets others expose their instability, their fear, their lack of discipline, while he remains unreadable. That unreadability is true power that endures, because in the absence of clear emotional signals, people begin to project. They imagine what you might do. They wonder what you might be capable of. And in that uncertainty, they hesitate, and hesitation is your opening. Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Stillness isn't the absence of adversity. It's what you hold on to in the midst of it. It's the refusal to panic, the ability to stay composed when the room is losing its mind. This is where true influence begins, because the one who controls himself first controls the situation next. The Stoic doesn't seek to overpower with force. He neutralizes with presence. His silence is not weakness, it's precision. He doesn't rush, he doesn't scramble, he doesn't respond to every insult, because silence makes foolish words echo back louder. He doesn't rush, he doesn't scramble, he doesn't react to disrespect, because stillness turns the pressure back on the source. And he never shows his entire hand, because mystery makes men cautious. You don't need to be feared to hold true power that endures. You need to be respected, and respect is earned in the moments when others expect you to break. But you don't. In the chaotic world, composure is intimidating, and in the reactive world, discipline is rare. That rarity makes you a presence people cannot ignore, because while others burn hot and fast, you burn cold and slow and outlast them all. Understand this clearly. This is not about being passive. It's about being prepared. It's about keeping your energy contained until the moment. Requires action. And when that moment comes, you move once, clean, precise, without emotion. That's Stoic, true power that endures, not scattered, not rushed, but complete. To master this kind of unshakable strength, you must stop thinking like everyone else. You must stop seeing true power that endures as volume. Start seeing it as discipline. Start seeing it as the ability to remain untouched while everyone else is unraveling. And understand this: if you can't deep self-control your face, your tone, your breath, then you are not in deep self-control at all. The first battlefield is always internal. So when the world around you erupts, you stay still. Not because you don't care, but because you refuse to be moved by the storm of chaos. You are the calm in the center of the storm. That's how true power that endures speaks. It doesn't shout, it watches. And when the time comes, it moves. One sand ends the game in any conflict. Truth is important, but perception is what determines the outcome. The Stoics understood this long before it became strategy. How you're seeing shapes, how you're treated, and often your greatest leverage isn't found in facts. It's found in the energy you project under pressure. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we are disturbed by things, but by our interpretation of them." Now flip that: people are not moved by what's true, they are moved by what they believe to be true. The man who appears calm, grounded, and clear under pressure commands attention, commands respect, even if deep down he is still learning, still struggling, still unsure, because perception doesn't wait for reality to catch up. It shapes the terrain before a single fact is considered. In a high-stakes situation, the Stoic does not panic. He lets others show their instability. He doesn't rush. He doesn't scramble. He doesn't rush to speak. He listens carefully. He waits until emotion reveals the weak points in the opponent's position. He doesn't rush. He doesn't scramble. He doesn't interrupt. He lets the other person pour it all out, then responds with silence or with one line that shifts the entire dynamic. That's not manipulation. That's emotional composure. That's positioning. Because when you appear emotionally stable, even when the pressure is high, others begin to doubt their own footing. They start wondering, why is he not flinching? What does he know that I don't? That doubt is powerful. It makes them hesitate. And hesitation in conflict is an opening. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you have true power that endures over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find unshakable strength. Your true power that endures begins with how you hold yourself. Not just physically, but energetically. People don't just listen to your words, they read your posture, they feel your tone, they respond to your energy. If you appear rattled, even if you're right, they will sense weakness. But if you appear clear, even when facts are against you, you tilt the field in your favor. This is why the Stoic focuses not on defending every detail, but on controlling the frame. The frame says, I am not here to argue. I am here to decide. I am not reacting to pressure. I am setting the tone. That's presence. That's true power that endures in a noisy world. The quiet man, with clarity, becomes magnetic. He doesn't rush. He doesn't scramble. He doesn't have to prove he's right. He just has to look like he's already won. This doesn't mean being fake. It means aligning your posture with your principles. The Stoic does not fake confidence. He builds it one composed moment at a time, because when you're clear on who you are, you no longer need to convince anyone. You walk into the room with a frequency that says, I cannot be shaken. And here's the paradox. Even when others lie, exaggerate, or try to twist perception, the calmest presence still wins, because the storm of chaos is loud. But clarity is contagious. So next time you're under pressure, ask yourself, am I reacting or am I composing the narrative? You don't need to dominate through aggression. You shape perception through restraint. Your stillness becomes the mirror that reflects others' instability. Your silence becomes the canvas onto which others project their doubts. The one who controls the emotional tone controls the room. So hold your posture. Speak less, mean more. Let your actions whisper confidence. Let your energy create the story. In Stoicism, perception is not passive. It's a tool. And when you master how you're seeing, you no longer chase outcomes. You start defining them. A Stoic doesn't waste energy trying to deep self-control other people. He controls the environment, because he knows that when you shift the space, you shift the behavior that happens inside, it changes the battlefield and you change The battle Epictetus taught, don't demand that things happen as you wish them to happen as they do. But that doesn't mean surrender. It means aligning your strategy with what you can actually shape. You don't need to confront every person head on. You can shift the conditions around them quietly, subtly, until their decisions begin to align with the outcome you intended all along. That's not manipulation, that's wisdom, that's self-mastery in motion. Because here's what most people miss. When you try to force a change in someone's behavior, you invite resistance, but when you change their environment, they adjust on their own, not because you pushed, but because you built a new frame where old behaviors no longer fit. It's like redirecting a river. You don't need to fight the water, you shape the banks. This is how the Stoic operates. Not through deep self-control of people, but deep self-control of influence in business. This could mean altering the terms of engagement in relationships. It might mean redefining your boundaries in life. It could be as simple as shifting your schedule, your focus, or your proximity. When the Stoic sees that a situation is filled with the storm of chaos, he doesn't rush, he doesn't scramble, he doesn't panic. He reorders it when a conversation turns heated. He doesn't rush, he doesn't scramble, he doesn't escalate. He repositions a tone with one clear sentence or by pausing entirely. When the timing is off, he doesn't rush, he doesn't scramble, he doesn't force it. He waits, because timing is part of the environment too. Marcus Aurelius wrote, adapt yourself to the life you have been given and truly love the people with whom destiny has surrounded you. But adapt doesn't mean surrendering your true power that endures. It means understanding how to influence the conditions without forcing the outcome. This is strategy without struggle, deep self-control, without the storm of chaos. It's not about dominance, it's about direction. Imagine being in a negotiation. Rather than attacking your opponent's view, you change the timeline, shift the urgency, alter the resources on the table. And suddenly their position begins to collapse without a single raised voice. Or in personal life, instead of demanding someone respect your time, you build a schedule they have to fit into. Now the pressure isn't on you, it's built into the environment itself. This is how the Stoic avoids unnecessary confrontation. He built the conditions that lead people rather than trying to push them. Because the truth is, most people don't respond to logic. They respond to limits, they adjust to pressure, they shift when the structure around them shifts. That's why the Stoic doesn't argue. He adjusts the rules of the room. He uses silence when others expect resistance. He pauses the conversation when the emotion runs high. He reframes the situation when the old story no longer serves the truth. And most importantly, he builds an environment where weakness, confusion, and conflict can't thrive because there's no oxygen left for them. Your space is sacred. Your rhythm is sacred. When you protect those, you no longer need to change the person. You simply show them they must choose to rise or fall on their own. So ask yourself, what are you trying to force that could be redirected? What relationship needs new rules instead of new arguments? What environment could be optimized so you no longer need to fight within it? Deep self-control, the frame. And the behavior inside that frame will follow. Because the Stoic doesn't just walk into rooms, he reshapes them. True power that endures doesn't always look powerful. Sometimes it looks quiet, sometimes it looks like surrender, but to the Stoic, appearances are a weapon, and he knows exactly how to use them. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, look beneath the surface, let not the semblance of things mislead you. Because he understood the surface is never the whole story. The Stoic doesn't need to appear strong at all times. In fact, he sometimes lets himself appear underestimated, not because he lacks unshakable strength, but because that perception gives him leverage to appear weak. When you are not, is not deception, it is restraint. It is the practice of letting your enemy drop their guard, reveal their assumptions, and expose their strategy before you ever need to act. In a world obsessed with proving itself, the Stoic knows the advantage of waiting, because arrogance is loud and arrogance blinds. Let them believe they've won. Let them talk, let them relax, let them reveal everything in their overconfidence. Seneca reminds us, he who is brave is free. And sometimes bravery means staying silent while others waste their energy on noise and performance. The Stoic doesn't rush to correct every insult. He doesn't rush. He doesn't scramble. He doesn't scramble to prove his capability. He is secure in his true power, that endures so secure that he can let others misread him. Because when the time comes, he doesn't rush, he doesn't scramble, he doesn't react, he executes, not emotionally, not loudly, but with precision. The greatest impact often comes from the most unexpected angle, and the Stoic uses timing as a blade. He knows that by the time his enemy realizes what's happening, the move is already complete. There is the storm of chaos, no drama, only outcome. Understand this clearly. This is not cowardice. This is deep self-control. Appearing vulnerable is not the same as being vulnerable. Stoicism teaches the exact opposite, that inner resilience is what matters, and everything external is simply a mask. So when the Stoic walks into a room, he doesn't rush, he doesn't scramble, he doesn't feel the need to flex, he doesn't rush, he doesn't scramble, he doesn't need to posture or dominate. He lets others fill in the blanks, and in their assumptions, they build their own downfall. This isn't about manipulation, it's about strategy. It's about understanding that true power that endures used sparingly hits harder than true power that endures used constantly. It's like the archer who waits for the wind to still and then loses one arrow straight into the center. If you must strike, finish it half measures. Invite retaliation. Stoicism teaches that mercy without clarity can become cruelty. The Stoic doesn't humiliate. He finishes with dignity, firm, silent, and complete. There's no need for spectacle, no need for an audience. Just a clean decision followed by silence the enemy walks into. Their own trap. And the Stoic never had to raise his voice. And if you think this is about revenge, think again. This is about peace. Real peace. The kind of peace that doesn't come from avoidance, but from resolution, from knowing that the situation has been handled so fully that it will never rise again. When you must act, don't act from emotion, act from clarity. Strike not to punish, but to end the noise, because the Stoic doesn't chase closure. He creates it, and when it's done, he never looks back, he doesn't rush, he doesn't scramble, he doesn't explain, he doesn't rush, he doesn't scramble, he doesn't justify, he doesn't rush, he doesn't scramble, he doesn't seek applause. He moves on, quiet, precise, untouched. Before you move, reduce the noise before you act, strip away the storm of chaos. That is how a Stoic prepares for decisive action in any battle, physical, mental, or emotional. The true threat is rarely the enemy. It's the distractions that surround him. It's the influence he carries, the voices that echo behind him, the alliances that embolden him. So before the Stoic moves, he isolates, not to punish, not to dominate, but to create clarity. Epictetus wrote, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life, and to be truly free in your decision-making, you must first free yourself from the distortion of outside influence. You don't win by charging into the storm of chaos. You win by removing everything that gives the storm of chaos unshakable strength in a negotiation." This might mean separating the person from their support system in relationships. It might mean stepping back until emotions settle in strategy. It might mean creating distance between your target and their leverage until they're no longer shielded, no longer surrounded, no longer confident. The Stoic understands this. Confidence in isolation reveals what is real. Anyone can appear strong with an audience. Anyone can act bold when surrounded by noise. But when the crowd is gone, when the spotlight fades, only truth remains. That's the space where the Stoic operates best, because he doesn't rush, he doesn't scramble, he doesn't just confront people, he confronts patterns, and patterns can't survive in silence. That's why he steps back, not because he's avoiding the situation, but because he's eliminating the variables to act from a place of peace. You must create it first, and peace begins. Where unnecessary influence ends, this is how the Stoic dissolves conflict. Before it escalates, he doesn't rush, he doesn't scramble, he doesn't engage when emotions are high, he doesn't rush, he doesn't scramble, he doesn't attack when the ground is still shifting, he waits, he isolates the moment, clears the energy, and then moves with full command. Seneca once said, associate with people who are likely to improve you, but the reverse is also true. Disassociate from anything that weakens your clarity. You don't need to defeat someone in public. You don't need to make an example. You simply pull the thread until their arguments unravel on their own. Understand this clearly. This is not about humiliation. It's about removing oxygen from confusion. If someone disrespects your boundaries, you don't yell. You retreat quietly until they feel the void of your absence. If someone uses others to strengthen their position, you don't attack the group. You create distance from it until alliances crack and pressure isolates. Because once they stand alone, you no longer have to overpower them. They begin to doubt themselves. And that doubt, that's the moment of leverage. The Stoic moves from position, not emotion. He doesn't rush. He doesn't scramble. He doesn't get pulled into a group's energy. He doesn't rush. He doesn't scramble. He doesn't get baited into chaotic reactions. He chooses his conditions. He creates the space. Because when you isolate the situation, you can see the truth. You can respond without distortion. You can act without confusion. And once you move, once you speak, once you decide, there is no need to repeat it. You don't confront again. You don't revisit. You don't explain, because the strongest action is one that does not require second. The Stoic doesn't act for revenge. He acts for resolution. He ends the conflict before it spreads, not by force, but by removing all the fuel that allowed it to survive. So if you feel overwhelmed, isolate. If you're unsure of someone's intentions, create distance. If you're preparing to act first, cut the noise. Because when the path is quiet, your next move becomes undeniable. True dominance isn't found in noise. It's found in how still you remain. When the room grows loud, it's found in the way you observe before you move, in the way you think before you speak, in the way you choose to let go rather than react. The Stoic doesn't chase deep self-control. He becomes the kind of man who doesn't need to demand it, because it arrives with him. True power that endures without inner order is the storm of chaos. Strategy without emotional mastery is weakness and force. Without clarity is noise. But when you combine presence, restraint, timing, and silence, you become something rare. You become untouchable. Not because you overpower others, but because you no longer need to. You don't destroy your enemy. You outlast them. You don't rush to win. You walk with inevitability. Let the world waste its unshakable strength in reaction. You'll build yours in stillness. And if this message spoke to something deeper in you, something that refuses to live on autopilot, something that wants to rise with clarity and precision, then don't just watch in silence. Subscribe to Modern Stoic Life. Here we don't just talk philosophy, we live it, we sharpen it, and we use it every single day.